Is it better? Well, it's okay. So here's the agenda. I thought I would like to include a picture of the man who organized that, and as a way to thank him. Dylan is a great conference organizer. I've been speaking at HITB many times, and I really admire what he's doing for the community. So anyway, we're going to go through very quickly, because I don't want to bore you, some basics about telcos, because you'll need well, some sort of technical reference to understand the rest of the speech. We will talk about the Athens Affair, which is a story that happened in 2005 in Greece, and which at the time in the industry made a lot of noise and was a lot of surprise for many people. And then we're going to fast forward about 10 years to talk about what we believe is the same themes that we observed during a live session on a mobile operator. And we'll discuss a little bit what we found about that attacker and some of the forensic stuff we could recover, and, well, not so many conclusions, but at least some. So let's start talking about Greece. First, just a few basics about telecommunications. I mean, you're all using mobile phone networks every day. You don't really know how it works, but it's made of a lot of what we call network elements. Network elements are usually proprietary platforms that are sold by vendors like Nokia, Ericsson, Alcatel, Huawei, ZTE, etc. Mostly they are centered around what is nicknamed a switch, MSC, mobile switching center. The switch is basically the network element that handles all the calls and switch them from one caller to another. It's a very large platform. It's usually distributed in many sites. Contains a subscriber database called HLR. The terminology is changing on that slide. I've put the GSM terminology on the left, the IMS LTE terminology on the right. It's basically the same thing. There's something that switches the call. There's something that handles subscribers, something that handles data, and something that handles value-added services. And all this is, of course, billed through a billing system. Also, in many of those networks, there's equipment to intercept communications. As you know, law enforcement has a need to conduct phone taps, and they're not conducted like you see on the movies. They're actually conducted through a very user-friendly platform that allows you real-time interception, and we'll see some of those details later on. So, what was the so-called Athens Affair? Now, what happened is that in 2005, almost by mistake, something was noticed in the Vodafone network in Greece that led to the discovery of a very, very sophisticated attack. That attack, remember, it's in 2005. It's before the Snowden revelation that would only come, in 2013. And we didn't know at the time the scale and the capabilities of nation-state actors. And so the sophistication of the attack was very, very surprising. I mean, we've heard about hackers all the time, but this was something really way beyond anything that's been seen before. And in fact, since then, nothing of that scale has been uncovered. So it was really a huge surprise for the security professionals of the time, including myself. There were government officials' phones that were tapped in real time, a lot of them. There's an investigation that was conducted. There's even a key witness that committed suspicious suicide. There were various agencies involved in the investigation, and the conclusion were never really conclusive, if I might say so, but they pointed towards the nation-state involvement, as we will see. Because we don't have too much time, I'm not going to go into the details of what exactly happened, but this is a timeline. Basically, the timeline is within the context of the Olympic Games. Apparently, at the time, it was decided, we don't know by who, that there could be a terror threat to the Olympics, and that telecommunication should be checked and to counter such threats. But the difficulty was that the equipment wasn't installed in the operator, in the Vodafone operators. They didn't have what's called a lawful intercept gateway. which is the platform that you need to do law enforcement interceptions. Someone installed some rogue software onto the Ericsson equipment of that network. You have the precise timeline. We know that there's some shadow phones that were commissioned for that operation. When I call shadow phone, it's basically phones that were used to receive the intercepted communications. The way it works, when you do an interception and party A calls to party B, and then there's a kind of conference call that is made without their knowledge to a third party, let's say the phone number C, and then you can hear both sides of the conversation on that phone. So first, those shadow phones were provisioned into the network, which means they were created using prepaid subscriptions, and then they were hidden from the system. And then the rogue software was installed in the exchange, and initially it couldn't be used for monitoring, but then after a while it was used to commit a lot of interception. It was installed on several exchange. When I say exchange, it's the same as a switch, as a MSC, so basically the core network element that is used to switch calls. And then in the few months that followed, there were a few things that appeared in the network. The first thing is that some SMSs were not delivered after a software upgrade. Now that software upgrade was actually after the investigation was done. It was discovered that that software upgrade was done to modify the switching equipment so it could perform those illegal interception. For some reason, that software patch had a kind of side effect that it was blocking delivery of SMS on some subscribers. So there were complaints. The subscribers, they complain, they call the operator, they say, hey, my SMS not getting delivered. So in this case, an operator, what do? They assign a team to investigate, and then they investigate. And during the investigation, they found that something was amiss. They found that some software has been installed that was unauthorized. And that basically started a whole international investigation that involved several of the Greek national security agencies, law enforcement, judiciary, etc., Committee on Intelligence. And because of a number of missteps, a lot of forensics evidence was deleted from that case. For example, the visitor logbooks were erased, which means they were not able to see who was accessing the site where the equipment was located at the time. Also, some of the logs that were kept on key server were erased because those servers were upgraded and replaced. So there were some, then again, I suppose it's the case in many places, that you've got procedures to collect forensics evidence, but at the end of the day, it's not always properly collected. You don't always have access to it. And when you have access to it, it's not always complete. Now, when you think about interception of phone calls, there are a few challenges. If you're law enforcement, you cannot do that on your own. You have to get the cooperation from the network operator. And that is the main problem for them. Because if you want to cooperate with an operator, you need to be lawful. You need to have court orders, you need to have subpoena, you need to have some authorities giving you the right to conduct those interceptions. So this is one little problem. If you want to do mass interceptions, like like we've seen the NSA doing, for example, well, it has its limits. You cannot intercept every single phone call in every country, because then who would be able to listen to them? So you've got a lot of financial cost. You've got human resources associated with those mass interceptions. So they're not always practical. Also, some countries are not willing to help. For sure, the authorities of one country will always have the cooperation from their own operators. But if you go to the next country or to a country at the other side of the planet and ask them to hand over their record, they're most likely going to send you away. So there are solutions that have been developed by vendors that do not require the cooperation of the operators. They are called IMSI catchers, and probably you've heard about them. They are basically equipment that abuse the weaknesses of the GSM crypto protocols to do some sort of man-in-the-middle attack if they're active, or if they're passive, they just record where you are, your position, your number, etc. Those IMSI catchers are used by law enforcement and by other actors all over the place. The problem is that you need to be physically located near the target. And this is a big restriction. In the case of the Greek interception, the scenario would have been like this, ideally, that you would have a cell phone user that's attached to a base station. His communications are encrypted over the air. Of course, if you have an MC catcher and you're next to him, you can decrypt those communications, assuming that there's some weakness in the protocol, which is often the case. But this is not what we're interested in. We're interested in doing that on a network level, not at the individual level. So your call is relayed by the BSC, the base station controller, and then it goes through the switch, and then it's sent out to the other parties. Now, in the case of Ericsson, which is the vendor that we're considering here, they're using a system called AX, and this AX system has subsystems. One of them is called the RES, the Remote Control Equipment Subsystem, that allows you to do those interception. However, it also requires the interception management system software, which at the time the Greek hadn't purchased. They had the equipment to do the interception, but they didn't have the software license. So instead of doing it the normal way, meaning that you get a warrant from recognized authorities, you are the software then enables you to intercept communication and to send them somewhere where you can analyze them, etc. They were not able to do that because the software, the IMS software, wasn't installed. So what they did is they actually patch the switch software to do those interceptions without the help of any third-party software. Now, that has a lot of advantages because there's no audit, there's no need for judiciary cooperation, there's no logs, no one is aware that you're doing those interception, but you still have the facility to intercept people the same way if you had the proper software. So this was kind of unheard of, to modify the switch software to do rogue interception, but this is what was done. Oops, sorry. Now, at the time, the media went berserk in the way they were describing that case, but for sure the headlines actually are quite accurate considering the scale of the attack. The most bizarre and embarrassing scandal ever to engulf a major cell phone service provider. Now, that's probably accurate, actually. I work with telecom operators in the security function. I've never seen an attack like this. Any other than this one. You probably can't read well the text, but basically it's listing all the government officials that were tapped by that operation. Now, we're talking about the Prime Minister, his wife, senior cabinet members, ministries officials, representatives from a lot of government agencies, and also some other targets, including Merchant Marine, Foreign Affairs, Public Order, Ministry of National Defense, Navy General Staff, even an employee of the US Embassy, some anti-globalization group and peace activists, civil rights organizations. Now, that's quite a large target. Now, it was thought at the time that maybe some of those targets, like peace activists or anti-globalization, they were just there as a decoy, but we don't really know who did the interception. So we don't know what was the purpose because it's never been really exposed conclusively. What we know is that the investigation detected 29 program blocks patch, which corresponds to 6,500 lines of Plex. And you will see in the coming slides that this is not such a small feat. The data was kept protected in a memory area that wasn't used usually, and this is where they were keeping the phone numbers of those special shadow phones. They also patched the user accounting system in the telecom network elements. Now remember, the telecom network elements, they are proprietary platforms. They're not Unix systems. They are really proprietary. They use a specific language, specific interface. It requires very advanced knowledge to be able to manipulate those equipments. You can't really find documentation on the web, etc., like you would for a Unix system. Anyway, they added some secret users, they disabled auditing, so they were able to issue commands on any network element without being audited. And also because they were modifying software blocks in the MSC, they also were able to modify the checksum of those software blocks. So any kind of legitimate admin that would check what are the software installed in my, in my system. Let me check again the proper checksum. He wouldn't see anything. They've really done it properly. And the conclusion of that story, I mean, there was a long investigation that involved a lot of people, and it's still, and up to 2 years ago, it was still happening. But we don't really know who's done that. There are some suspicion, but there's never been any kind of proof. There was suspicion that one of the partners of Vodafone, called Telecom, could have been involved because they had access to the kind of software that was being developed. They were delivering Ericsson key software that was used with the Vodafone network. There was also the involvement of that network planning manager who was found in an apparent suicide at his apartment, and apparently the circumstances were suspicious, and it's believed that either he was involved in enabling that access or he discovered it and was about to expose it. In both cases, people that were doing that maybe decided that he should be removed. Again, there was no real proof. Of course, US agencies were suspected. That's pretty obvious. And in 2015, 10 years after the fact, Greece issued an arrest warrant for a former US embassy employee in that case. So it is suspected that the US involvement was the reason for that attack, but it's never been proven. A lot of logs and evidence was deleted, and no one was ever able to prove that it was the US or any other party. Vodafone got fined $100 million or something, which correspond probably about 5 minutes of their profit. So a slap on the wrist. There was just one thing in some of the declassified documents that we found in the Snowden archives. We find some reference in the NSA text to some gift that they wanted to give Greece in the run-up to the Olympics. They basically said that we need to support the anti-terror measures during the Olympics. So basically, they probably, I'm speculating here, there is no proof, but they probably came to the Greek and said, well, you're going to have the Olympics coming up, it's a big terror target, a lot of foreign athletes are going to be there. Let us help you. We'll help you by monitoring your telecommunications and alert you if there's any bad guy doing bad things. And maybe once the Olympics were finished, they forgot to remove the equipment. That's what's speculated in the Intercept document. The Intercept website has a nice article about it. It's referenced at the end. So anyway, whoever has done that disappeared and was never seen again, never heard from, apart from that investigation that was done at the time. No one ever had any idea of who those guys were, where they came from, where they were gone after. There's never been a case like that before, and since then there's never been a case like that ever again. So, fast forward 10 years, we're now in 2015, and we are doing a security audit on a telecom operator. That's what we do. Usually it takes about 3 to 6 months for a medium-sized operator. We review the infrastructure, the systems, the databases, access control, and all sorts of things. And we were in the middle of doing some host assessment. So, and by pure luck, we spotted an attacker. Because we were taken by surprise, we didn't have the right tools, we were not on our own systems, we were on the client system at the time. We used what we had on the machine to record forensics evidence. And the attacker wasn't very long in front of us. We only had a few minutes to observe and dump data. But what we found was quite interesting. So this is what we're going to review. And the first thing is that I'm going to tell you a little bit about Plex, because the whole thing was done in the Plex language. And I don't know how many of you in this room are familiar with Plex. I don't even ask you to raise your hands because I know that, yes? Wow.
I don't program in it, but I know of
you know of it, why you're one of the very rare people who've heard that obscure language. Now, to show you how obscure it is, well, it was created in the 70s, right? Someone has described it as a cross between Fortran and a macro assembler. I mean, if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what will. And actually, the guy who created the Erlang language, which is heavily used in telecommunication nowadays, actually based it on Plex because he thought that was a nice language, but it needed to evolve. So anyway, just to give you a practical example, there's a site called 99 Bottles of Beers. I don't know if you know it, but it's basically a site that has the same program written in every programming language known to man. And just here I've put two versions. I mean, the goal is simple. You have to write a program that basically prints the sentences of a song called 99 Bottles of Beer. So this is a Python example, pretty easy to read. This is Perl, of course. Perl, you can do it in one line as usual. And now I will see you what it's like to have it in Plex. Right. So you see, compared to the 2 lines of Perl, this is Plex. And of course, I didn't have syntax highlighting because, well, there's no editor known to man that does Plex syntax highlighting. So it's kind of bizarre. You've got some declarative statements. You've got some interrupt, some signals. Well, so you can imagine the difficulty of those guys who were patching a live MSC written in Plex. Now, I don't know if you know what an MSC looks like, but it's not a PC. It looks like this, okay? So you've got that kind of machine with all sorts of plug-in units and processors and modules and whatnot. You've got that obscure programming language that takes tons of pages to write a simple program. And then you've got people who are able to patch that live while it's running. This is not your average hacker who's just got his Kali Linux and decided he's going to use Metasploit to do a pen test. No, this goes ways beyond this. You need development experience with that language. You need to be able to understand how it's patched. You need to understand how it is loaded into the system, how it is incredibly difficult. So I'm going to go through the steps of how we discovered and what we discovered. So basically, we were on a Spark system, a Sun Solaris box. Sorry, I can't call it Oracle. It just hurts. So I'll call it Sun, because it should never have been bought by Oracle. But anyway, there was that guy, the pen tester that was doing the job. He typed the W command. He saw a root login. Nothing unusual about that, except the next second that root login was gone. And he said, well, this is weird because I'm seeing a root process that's got a TTY, which means he's logged on, he's on a terminal, but he's not in the logged in user. I also see his SSH connection, so he's coming from another machine. It's not me dreaming. And when I do a P files on him, love those Solaris tools, you notice that he's got write access to WTMPX, which is one of the system accounting files on Solaris. So you've got a ghost root process that is erasing tracks of its activity. So definitely we knew that was not an Ericsson engineer or a Vodafone employee. It's a hacker that was hiding his tracks. So we started looking. Remember, this is live, right? We see that guy. We know, wow, what are we going to do? So we're on Solaris. We don't have our own tools. We only can use what there is on the box. There is no debugger. Okay, so we have LSoft, we have PS, we have G-Core, various tools like that. So we use what we have. First, we find what directory is working in. And you can see from those directory names, okay, Axe is the hardware platform of Ericsson. This is the MSC name, some release numbers, some upgrade software package. You can see it has to do with MSC software packages. At this stage, we're not even suspecting the Greek guys. We just say, well, there's a hacker. He's looking at stuff. What is he doing? So we're watching. And we notice that there is an upgrade that has been performed. And after asking the operator, they say, no upgrade was scheduled. So, okay, let's have a look at what was that upgrade doing. So we started looking a little bit. I've cut for simplicity, but We saw that he was issuing some commands about traffic recording. We saw that he was updating features linked to mobile traffic recording, extended lawful interception capacity. We saw that he was doing some MML commands on some of the network elements. So, wow, we see, wow, something is definitely funny. Those guys are modifying the software blocks of the MSC. No one at the operator is aware of that. And it seems to be doing something linked to the recording of calls. So we dug a little bit more in the system, and we found that he was interested in that directory, and that directory was the directory that contains those 5 names here. We thought that was interesting because in one of the Perl scripts that we recovered from the attacker, we saw, you see the first string here, the directory name. So obviously it's processing that directory of those files in it. And then, I mean, this is simple Perl stuff. It's basically reading things, unpacking with some various encoding to what we think is extracting checksums and version numbers from those files. And we ran the script, and we were able to see that the output was basically the software modules, version numbers, checksums, release numbers, etc. So he's obviously dumping all what he needs to prepare for his hostile patch. Because remember what we said about the Athens Affair is that they were able to change the checksum. So the admins, when they type list package install, they would see the right packages with the right checksums, the right dates, the right versions. So presumably, they are gathering that information so they can camouflage their little nasty work later on. So yeah, well, this is just a generic slide to show how a threat agent moves inside a network. Let me put the next slide better, because this is where we were. We discovered him on an OSS machine. An OSS is basically one of the machines that is supervising network elements, and that OSS machine has the rights to push software updates to any network element it wants. So we found that the attacker or attackers managed to penetrate the network through some entry point that breached the perimeter. They went through some host, and then they established their base here. They patched the software on the MSC using the upgrade mechanism, and we saw that they also had some other hosts that were talking to some 2 command and control servers that were located outside on the internet in 2 different countries. So we were able to infer a little bit the methodology of the attacker, but there's nothing unusual. We don't know how he got in the first place. We don't know what was the initial entry vector. What we know is that they've established a persistent infrastructure inside the operator, so they were able to go back at will, exfiltrate data at will, and modify all the data they wanted. So we wanted to understand more what it was doing, so we noticed that there was a process running in the machine that didn't have a binary on the file system. Now, this is highly unusual. Usually when you run something on the system, the file you run it from is still there. But here we saw a binary on the PS output that wasn't in the file system. So this is also a hacker trick. You know, you run something, then you remove it, so it cannot be investigated, but it's still in memory. So we use a G-core, a nice Solaris tool, to dump the core of a running process. And we were also able to recover the binary from the proc file system that Solaris caches the binaries there. So even if it was removed from the file system, it was still inside /proc. What we found is that mysterious binary that we saw running was actually a shell that was loading and unloading LUA scripts. So it's basically just an engine to load and unload modules and execute them. Now, this is very, very flexible. It's basically, if you need something, you just send it as a module, it will load it, and then it will run it. And so you can load and unload dynamically modules. This is quite a sophisticated environment that they had. You can see this is no beginner's work. But obviously we didn't hit the latest version. I'm sure they fixed it now. But that nice modular architecture that they used to load and unload modules was designed in a way that kept the scripts in clear text in the memory. So we were also able to recover some of the scripts, and also from that core file we also recovered the SSL certificate that allow us to decrypt their CNC communication. So sophisticated platform, but could be improved, especially in the OPSEC stuff. So we were first able to see what kind of protocols they use to talk to their CNC. So we can see the timestamp, and then we see the VM number, what the modules, the LUA modules, they call them VM, maybe like virtual machine, I don't know. And you see they're having some modules like remote.lua, they're talking to 2 different IP addresses, those are the 2 CNC. So we can see sometimes the CNCs are not responding, connection refused, sometimes they time out, and sometimes they are able to send messages. So we were able to see the operation of the implant talking to the CNC and what kind of loading, unloading, etc. it was doing. We were able then to see what exactly are they doing with those modules, so they can get themselves a prompt, and from that they have specific commands, so they can run, they can check the status of some of their jobs. You can see they have many different implants being loaded. Some of them are doing remote communication. Some of them are doing we don't know what, but all of them are maintained by that single entity that we discovered. So this was very interesting to see that they were a very modular architecture. You can see the LUA scripts are organized by type. You see some apparently to do SSL, some to do the VM, the socket stuff, etc. So this is a very modular architecture. You can see that it's been well thought out for this kind of operations. And then we were able to extract some of the LUA code that shows that indeed they were doing MSC block patching. It's not probably very clear from this output, but we were able to to recover some code that shows the same version number and the same build number, etc., as the stuff that we've discovered before. So we were showing indeed that they wrote some code to recover the blocks, to write in them, to execute commands, to find out the address. They were also looking for free space. They're looking for some free space to hide their code. They found some free blocks. So they have tools to analyze and patch the software blocks that we saw earlier. So that's why we were very confident at this stage that it is the same team as the Athens Affair, because there's only one team in the world that is known to live modified Plex code on a running system, and it's them. I'm almost done. And yeah, this is more of their LUA code that we recovered. I'm not going to go through that. It's not very interesting. And the conclusions. The conclusion is what we have seen is a sophisticated attacker that is able to enter and exit complex networks. The Vodafone network is not a small network, and it's a secure network. As you can imagine, a telco network has got all sorts of firewall, intrusion detection system, a security team that's monitoring all this. And those guys, they were behaving like if they were at home. They had their own tools, their own staging host. They were able to do some advanced patching of the MSC software. They had full access to the OSS. I mean, if you don't work in the telecom, you don't realize what it means having full access to the OSS. But it means I control everything in your network. I can shut down everything. I can redirect everything. I can block any calls in your country for as long as I want. It's very, very serious. It means they have full control of the whole network. They were able to do modification to the software blocks that do call monitoring, call interception and monitoring. They had a mature command and control infrastructure. They had a modular implant operations. And they had a similar fingerprint as the Athens Affair. And because of the way their tools are developed, because of the way they look industrialized, they look very robust, we believe that has marks of a state actor, because I don't think a bedroom hacker has the time or resources to do this kind of things. So that's it. I managed not to talk too long. And we even have time for a few questions, perhaps. Don't know. Yep.
Yeah, we've got time for one question, no problem. Who wants to raise the question after this really interesting and really detective-like story.
So, to your knowledge, how many telcos are actively looking in their networks for this kind of attacks today?
Well, my bet is that Ericsson took notice of that, and they. I don't have any confirmation from Ericsson, but if I was Ericsson, I used to work for a telecom vendor. I used to work for Nokia, so it's kind of similar. I know how they work. I know how they think. Ericsson is probably having a procedure to check for that now in their network. I don't know. I would assume. But from the vendor perspective, yeah, it's embarrassing, but it's not really their problem. It's more the operator's problem. And the number of operators, to answer your question, who actively look at some advanced hack like this, it's probably close to zero. That would be my guess. Because you can't. This is done too well. The software has been patched, but the checksum have been modified. There's no trace being left. I mean, you're not going to reverse engineer compile Plex code to find out it's been modified. It's very, very difficult. You would only detect that if there is side effects, like it was the case on Vodafone, or by pure luck, like we did on that network operator, because we typed W at the right time when the user was logged in the few seconds before he removed his tracks, we were able to see it. So that was complete stroke of luck. So either through mistakes that generate side effects that then they investigate, or pure luck like us. But as a systematic way of detection, I don't think there are operators are able to do that. They wouldn't know where to start.
So this could be an isolated case, or everybody could be...
Well, it could be an isolated case, but if you think about it, it was an active case in 2005, it's an active case in 2015. I don't think they took 10 years vacation in the meantime, you know. They probably were very, very busy doing what they do, so that's my guess. Yes?
I would actually, because they're hiding their software so well, but their infiltration and their exfiltration, that can be detected.
Well, yes, of course, that can be detected, but it's not as simple as you make it sound. Because, for example, a mobile operator, they've got mobile data users, right? So if you exfiltrate your data through the GGSN, then how are you going to find that exfiltrated data? There's millions of data flows going through that.
Intrusion detection systems is how we
I've seen IDSs at many network operators, and personally, I'm sorry if there's any IDS vendor or enthusiast in the room, I found them utterly useless.
usually configured to be useless.
Well, maybe the one I've seen were probably not well configured, but they scrolled millions of stuff, and in the first few days people are interested, and then they sort of give up. And the problem also is that this kind of attacks doesn't look like a offensive attack. It looks like someone doing a software upgrade on an MSC, which wouldn't be flagged by an IDS.
Don't you think that at least with IDS and firewalls on an operator network, and I am speaking a little bit from experience here. I'm not just normally a photographer in my day job.
Okay, all right. Point taken.
Using properly segregated networks, because you just said yourself, and I'm sorry, I'm going to call you out on this. You were talking about highly secured segregated telco networks. I know better.
Right. Well, okay. Yeah.
But I don't mean to go there.
No,
But this is one of the things, and we actually partnered with a very well-known IDS supplier who has quite a reputation above the cut of the rest of the market in this regards. And we were actually, for us, we actually put IDS sensors around our MS. Sorry, I'm getting tongue twisted. The MSC.
MSC.
Yes, thank you. The MS.
The switch.
You know what this? Yes, and as well as even around elements like the RT2000 on our 4G network.
Right.
And we did find very interesting things. In fact, after this, I would like to talk to you further.
Yeah. Well.
Because in this regards, one of the things we found that people, our MSC was actually being compromised at one point, and we were actually able to track these individuals down. They were fortunately locally here in the Netherlands, and found out how they were able to get on here. Of course, they weren't modifying Plex or anything that complicated. But in this regards, the elements of the telco infrastructure, when we were going to, Nokia and Ericsson, and asking for, in 2004, and asking for things like SSH and SNMP version 3. They were telling us nobody else was even asking. When we talked about segregating the MSC and other exchanges, they were saying nobody else is doing this. So I know Orange Netherlands was one of the first, probably even in all of Europe, to start doing this. And start putting intrusion detectors. And I've seen, to your credit, I have seen a lot of the other telcos and some of our sister companies had implemented IDS and IPS in completely the wrong way, and we later watched them retract it.
That's the thing, yeah.
But, so I do recognize, yes, most of the time it was done wrong, but with the right skills and the right experience and the right constructions, I think it can be done. And I am actually wondering, I want to talk to you further about this, how this could have been maybe leveraged to detect them coming into the network to these elements. And as hope.
Very complex topic. I'd actually like to ask about Erlang, if you guys are ever seeing attacks on Erlang in the wild. Is that a thing?
Well, I haven't seen it myself personally, no, but I don't see why it wouldn't be attacked. It's probably an attack surface. It's not Rust, right? So.
But you're not seeing it that much yourself?
I haven't seen anything.
Just curious. Thanks, Emmanuel.
Yeah, cheers. But to go back to that point, so it's not generic to the telcos, but yeah, an IDS when it's properly configured and a network when it's properly segmented and when the admins are doing properly their job and everything is properly patched, yes, you could possibly notice those attackers, but you have to realize that the average telco network is messy, is not properly segmented, even though we see some networks that are doing it properly, and this is, in my opinion, the number one measure in a network to make it secure, to segment it. But most of the time, it's not done properly. The business has priority over security. They need to launch that new service. They need to do this. They need to do that. So it's impossible to secure. So it's not surprising that you don't detect this kind of advanced state actor.
Especially with the advent of IP into the telco world, that's changed everything.
Yeah, I think we're far away from having any kind of secure telco networks soon.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. And
right.
I think we can discuss on much more, but I think time's
Yeah, I mean,
up.
sure, I'll be happy to entertain any kind of discussion on the topic. I love that stuff.
And again, also these slides will be on the Hack in the Box website. So if you have any pressing questions left, please don't hesitate to contact Emmanuel. Emmanuel, thank you very much for this talk.
Thank you.